Hey, I'm Alan Furstenberg,
And I'm Noble Ackerson,
and welcome back to Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs.
Noble, wow, we're seeing a lot of each other these days, which is
I
good.
know. Might as well just become part of the family if I'm not already.
You're already, we're all of our guest hosts are part of the family. That's we Mark and I are very, very firm in that belief.
Awesome. Thank you.
Um,
Thank you for having me.
but we spent a bunch of time together at Voice and AI. Uh, it feels like it just ended. Um, but it's actually been a little bit of time between then and when we're recording
Has
this.
it?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
wow.
been a week.
Wow. Seems like
I
it's.
know, but it was a pretty. I had an amazing time. What did you think?
You got a lot of, for some reason, nobody, we're talking right before the show started, nobody really approaches you to give you kudos. But they filter that through me because I'm the nice one, or at least the approachable one. So, people came up after, we'll talk about this after our live two voice devs show, I guess, on stage there. And after the fact, I got one LinkedIn message, giving you a lot of praise, and how you sort of organized and how you provoked good conversation in the crowd. So
I'm glad the crowd liked it. So yeah, so one of the things we did was we did have a Two Voice Devs live and in person recording, and once that recording is made available to us, I will release it as an episode. So stay tuned for that in the next few weeks. Um, we got a couple of good questions there. I think we had a good conversation.
my favorite of the questions, if I can recall, was one about latency, and audio.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. That
Yeah,
that kind of tied things together. That was pretty good.
absolutely. It was a voice conference after
Yeah.
all.
And as much as I like to think that we were kind of like, this center of the show, um, there was a lot of other things going on. So
Absolutely.
so what else did you enjoy from the show while you were there? What else
Oh
did you do?
gosh,
No, and you also spoke and I also spoke. So
that's right. So I have to admit, I wasn't part of the pre-conference stuff. I literally swooped in, gave my talk, and swooped out. But in between, I did meet a lot of old friends, made new ones. I actually got a chance to speak to a couple people as to what they liked about the show. And on the last day, apparently Pete Erickson, the I guess the founder of MoDev, which runs this conference, gave a very impassionate keynote about that really inspired a lot of people. So I would implore anyone listening or watching to look out for some of the videos that come out of the various tracks. There were, I believe, like a generative AI track, prompts, a lot of
yep.
policy type things because this is DC. There was a lot of strategy. There's a lot of traditional voice stuff. I met linguists, which is amazing.
See, and I find that funny, and I love that, because I've been working with the linguists now for a few years,
Right.
and meeting them and talking to them at these conferences, and it was fantastic watching you and Micah really hit it off when the two of you encountered each other after your presentation.
Right.
That was fantastic.
That was amazing. That was amazing. And that was Micah was one of those. I have to share to your audience who may not have been at your talk, Alan, a funny joke that happened with Micah. So, for those who've ever been to a conference, you show up, you're sitting in the crowd, and the speakers sort of just, doing crowd work, I'll call it. You do that very well if anyone has seen any of your talks, Alan. And there was this sudden moment where we heard a disembodied voice. and it was a female voice, and it came over the PA system of sorts, and was asking. The person seemed to know who you were, Alan, and it took me way too long to figure out what was going on. But apparently, who was that?
That was Micah.
That was Micah.
And
Go ahead.
for some reason, the audio system for the two we were in adjacent rooms,
Right.
but the audio system for the two rooms were interconnected. So everything that she was saying was showing up in our room, and everything I was saying was showing up in her room as well. And that led to a fascinating few minutes of conversation before things got. They didn't even really get straightened out. We found a workaround. The audio team found a workaround. Yeah. Actually, it wasn't even the audio team that found a workaround. It was the videographer found a workaround. Mm-hmm. And I have been told that there are several recordings of this exchange between us, which we will make available at some point when we can. But, I think what was great about it was that Mike and I have known for a number of years. We don't agree on everything. Right. But we value each other's perspective and opinions. And there is almost no other circumstance where you would be able to get the two of us to share a podium and share a presentation. But here we were.
That's great. Hey, you did ask what was one of the talks that I actually did go, and I just remembered. Outside of the hilarity of your talk, and your talk was fantastic as always. There was a talk on privacy and GDPR, and anyone who knows me knows I'm a policy wonk. One of the few people who actually loves working with attorneys in order to deliver software that doesn't screw up, blow up the world. And coincidentally, Alan, that's actually how I started my entire career. I dropped out of college to go work for then Governor Warner.
That's right. We've discussed this before.
Yeah. And so I started out as a confidential assistant to tech policy, as my role. And that evolved into where I am today. So I have an affinity for the intersection of regulation and technology.
So what did the session what was the interesting bit about the session?
So the session was titled, and I'm cheating here, I pulled it up. It's called Addressing Privacy and the GDPR in ChatGPT and Large Language Models.
And that's a serious issue. I mean, we've seen OpenAI have some problems in Europe because of this.
In Italy and other places, exactly. And the speaker was one, Patricia Fain, I believe. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. She's a CEO and co-founder of a company called Private AI. I have never heard her talk before. I did not know who she was, but I'm now a fan. But she knows her stuff. And I thought I know my stuff, but that's certainly not, I've not really been a student of the intersection of privacy and large language models. I have my opinions, but she's a very learned orator in this sort of area, and so I was very sort of taken by what she had to share there. So that's another topic, Alan. But I'd like to flip the table to you. I've spoken too much. What did you love?
Well, so I think the first thing that I really loved about this conference in particular was kind of what we were touching on before, were the people. I mean, it's what I love about most conferences is, the ability that are the hallway tracks, are the, reconnecting with people who you've been working with for the past year. And now you get to see them in person, and you get to say, oh, that's how tall you actually are. I've been looking at your shoulders up for, You
actually got a comment like that.
I got a comment like that, but it's seeing people and meeting new people. It was fantastic when Heidi Culberson came over at one point with someone else in tow and introduced her to a bunch of us. And this was a 16-year-old who took the day off from school, not just to attend this conference, but to present at the conference.
Wow.
And, and she was now, meeting a bunch of other people who've been in this industry and learning from them and expressing what she's excited about. And, so that was wonderful. All of these things, the meeting new people, the reconnecting, all of that is just always, it's always exciting. And those are kind of, that's what I get out of it more than anything else in a lot of ways, are just, kind of sitting down and understanding, what are you doing? What are you trying to understand, and what are you wrestling with? And if I had to pick a presentation that I attended that I enjoyed the most, it actually probably would have been yours.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, okay. I think, I do kind of wish you could have elaborated a bit more, or kind of, you were rushed. It was clear you were rushed.
Right.
But I think you kind of put together this notion that we know raw LLMs have problems. They're not sources of truth. We know this. And you started laying out that structure for, well, okay, what do we do about it? And right now the big one of the things that I kind of had a sense of going in, but really got a sense of, is that everyone is talking about retrieval augmented generation. Right. Everyone's talking about it. That that was literally the big solution there for everything.
And you want to dive a little bit deeper into why that is?
Well, I mean, I feel like it boils down to, we don't trust LLMs hallucinate.
Right.
They're not to be trusted, but we could use them as a tool. And I feel like that was kind of the point that I was bringing out, is, they're not a solution, they're a tool. Is the sort of thing I saw others talking about. And you kind of said, it's a tool, and here's how we start to evaluate that tool. So I feel like, those are the topics that I was really the most interested in seeing, is how all of that got put together. How people are thinking about it, and how the presentations were reflecting that sort of thinking.
Today, I gave a talk at in DC. I went back to DC to give a talk about.
Now, to be fair, you don't live that far from DC.
I know, I right next door. And this format was different from the voice and AI talk. It was an Ignite talk, so I had 5 minutes. You want to say rushed? Man. I had 5 minutes to give. I think I found the missing pieces on how to sort of give this, get my hypothesis out. And so, just for those who've not heard me talk about why large language models are an unreliable information store, this is essentially it. That if you were to type into Bing or Google today, or Yahoo, whatever your search engine is, you type in your name, or you type in a fact that you know a little bit about, and you found that the information wasn't accurate, you had a lot of avenues. You have today a lot of avenues to rectify that. If it's your name, you can file a correction with Google directly. If it is something public relations related, let's say you are a celebrity and something was not factually right, there's a whole cottage industry of,
right. You do things like you update Wikipedia, you put out your own web, there's tons of things, we have ways of trusted sources,
right,
that we can handle.
The notion that enterprises and companies would say, wow, this thing is powerful, we want a chatbot. So lift and shift, quote in quotes, these modalities into the enterprise or into your startup in order to solve a specific problem is terrifying. It's terrifying because these things are probabilistic. They're not consistent. You can test 100 scenarios and red team 100 scenarios to protect your prompt, or at least your system, from doing something random, and your users, once in their hands, will find 101, like one more way to break your system, and it's
Right.
out of your hand.
And it's out of your, I feel like that's the thing, and, given spoiler alert, what you're talking about, what you're focusing on, your presentation, your forthcoming book are about is, well, what do you do about that?
What do you do about that?
So,
Right.
lot of great stuff. Did you, one of the interesting things I thought was that there was the vendor floor was right in the middle of everything. Did you, were any vendors that caught your eye that you thought were particularly interesting or,
Oh,
significant for you?
so there was I rediscovered a company out of Charlottesville, Virginia called Willow Tree. They're a traditional shop where they sort of build software and all that stuff. And I had to rediscover what they're doing these days, and they're doing some pretty impressive stuff. So shout out to Charlottesville, Virginia, UVA, Central, company called Willow Tree. I went to an event, like a session hosted by Vox, and they came prepared. They had like tote bags with glasses, or VUX, I think it's called. I don't know whether they go by Vox or VUX. I don't know. But they had a couple folks from Poly AI, Core AI, a couple major players in there to have a panel discussion. That was fun, I believe. Yeah, that was fun. I don't know. What about you?
I think I stopped by a few of them, not as many as I should have, and that bothered. I realized afterwards that I really should have spent more time with the vendors.
Mhm.
But it was interesting to me to notice that GitHub was there.
Right.
They were pushing Copilot.
OpenAI was there too.
I actually missed OpenAI.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
OpenAI was there. Microsoft was there. Of course, GitHub is Microsoft.
Well, but GitHub had their own booth. I mean, it was
Right.
a GitHub booth. It didn't say
Right.
I don't think I saw it say Microsoft anywhere on it. And of course, VoiceFlow was there. I think VoiceFlow had the most interesting booth of them all, because
Why?
really
Why
it
is
was,
that?
well, it was, they were just serving up mocktails. They had no literature, they had no swag, they had people there, but it was just a bar.
Nice. That's good. That's a good reason to hang out there. Did you do anything? Because again, I did not hang out. I had a lot going on that day, and I'm local and I'm not traveling, so I had family obligations, that kind of stuff. What was there like a happy hour or something like that?
There was dinner and happy hour, which was amazing. I've got to give Pete and Modev really some credit
Mm.
for what they did in terms of food. This is a small side note here, because but I've been to conferences where the food is kind of, it's coffee and a couple of donuts. Okay, they did an incredibly good job with breakfast, lunch, and a real food meal during happy hour for Wednesday night. There, it was, so Pete and his team did really, really went out of their way to be good to the folks that were there. So, and then after that, I understood there was a reception at a nearby bar, which people attended late into the night or early
Oh,
into the morning, depending on your perspective. I did not attend that one. But again, I think that goes to the point of the hallway track, the networking, the people that were
right,
there.
right.
It was fantastic for me to go to some of the presentations and some of the sessions and see people that I knew and get a better understanding of what it is that they're working on
They're
and
working on
doing.
it. Yeah.
And seeing 100 or so other people, learning from them. One of the sessions that I appreciated, I still have some issues here, was Roger Kibbe did a session on the second day about running your own LLM or running an open source LLM on your machine.
Yes.
And he and I have a long-standing set of issues on that front.
I think you and I do too.
You and I do as well.
On his side.
And well, I'm not against you guys. I agree with it. Just, my perspective, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. And actually, this ties back to something that Pete said in his opening keynote. People are making analogies that LLMs are like the dawn of the mobile era or the dawn of the internet. And he makes a case, and it's one I strongly agree with. And I've made similar arguments, that this is more like the dawn of relational databases.
I agree.
And
I thought that was your analogy.
It's similar to my analogy, but he said it on stage, and I want to give him full credit for it. And I've said I want it to be like databases. Right. He said this is, the era is like the dawn of the databases and what they do, because before relational databases were custom designed for every application. You had a few standard ones that were out there, but they were big and they were complex. You had a database administrator who was responsible for running a database and everything involved in that, and tuning it and making sure the queries ran okay, and making sure they were optimizing it. That was their responsibility. And now, I can be a PHP programmer, press a button and run a database, press another button and load a bunch of tables into it, and just use it. I don't have to, I need to know some things, I need to know some things. I need to know SQL. I need to know how to not to do stupid things with SQL. I need to know, so there's some things that I need to learn, but it's well within the reach of most programmers. And we're not quite
accessible. Yeah.
Right. We're not quite there yet with LLMs. We're close. We're really close. LLMs are now a tool that most programmers can easily access. You need to learn something. You need to learn how to write a prompt. But it's accessible. It's available. The parallel to running your own LLM is running your own database. It's only been relatively recently that you've been able to just download MySQL and run it on your machine at home.
Right.
With a couple of clicks. That's simple, that's straightforward. So I would, to Roger's presentation, hoping to see the MySQL for LLMs.
What did you come out with?
We're not there yet.
We're not. So that's if you're choosing to host a large language model internally, to host your embedding model internally. Right.
Well, this was, how to run Llama 2, how to take an open source model,
right?
Just like MySQL is an open source database,
right?
How to take it and run it on your machine. And I was literally hoping he was going to say, here's the program that you run. You then click on this and it's running.
We've had a show about this, by the way.
We've had a show about this. We're going to have more, I have a feeling.
I have a feeling.
Because we're not quite there.
We're not quite there.
We're close. We're darn close. I mean, what he showed was, he pointed out what the program was to run it. He said, it offers an API. It offers a REST API. So, it's there. And then he spent several minutes discussing which model you should download and exactly which parameters you're going to need and exactly how much quantization you would need to run on it. And what your hardware needed to be to make sure you had a GPU. And we're not there.
We're not there.
We're tantalizingly close. And I appreciate Roger for showing just how close we were.
That's sort of step 0, what Roger showed. Step 1 is then sort of taking those concepts and buttressing that with a unique use case for an enterprise context, whether it's information retrieval or automation and efficiency, or whatever, if you're a marketing team, whatever.
Well, I think that's going to be the bigger challenge that we start to see is I'm not even sure that stuff, I think we need to get it as a tool. And then we need to understand
and
how to use it as a tool.
this is where I was going with this, is that's where your argument resonates with me, because the types of customers that I deal with it's a non-starter to pass tokens, even if it's pseudonymized or whatever, to pass proprietary private information out
to the cloud. Right. You don't trust OpenAI with this. You barely trust Google with it, and you may not in a lot of, there are good reasons not to in a lot of cases. My presentation, one of the questions I asked was, why do we want to run an open source model? And there are good reasons to run it. There is no doubt about that.
But there is a ridiculous amount of complexity that you introduce that I frankly think, because I'm a practitioner, right? Like, I'm doing this for customers every week. And I am caveating some of the architectural decisions that I'm recommending with a simple fact. Llama 2 is a fantastic model. Yes. However, Llama 3 will come out tomorrow. And so we have to, or not even Llama 2, we'll call it, Elmo 3 comes out from another maker that has a completely different way to interact with the model. Prompts are structured differently. They may go the OpenAI route. You're basically adding a lot of complexity, and the development experience starts eroding in the sense that you're fighting the technology in order to tame it.
Well,
where Amazon, Google, Cohere, name it, Anthropic, OpenAI are basically abstracting a lot of that for you.
A lot of it, but not enough of it. And this is where I think things like Langchain are coming in. And you and I have had this discussion, and it was the subject of my presentation, and I'm going to be talking about it a lot more, I'm sure. That provides another abstraction that I think gets it even closer to where developers are used to today. I don't think it's quite SQL, but I mean, SQL was an abstraction. There were vendor specific additions to SQL, but largely SQL was, I could learn it anywhere and take it to the various databases. It abstracted enough about the relational algebra away from the database that anybody could use it to continue torturing that analogy. Let's start wrapping it up with this. We saw a lot this time. What didn't you see, and what do you think we're going to see next year? Next year, we already have the dates for it. Well, two things. One, and this I thought was amazing, was that Pete announced that he is doing a developer-focused conference. And that, I believe, is aimed for sometime in the spring. I don't think the dates on that are public yet, or I don't think the details on that are public yet. And Voice and AI 2024 will be back in Arlington next year. Hopefully bigger. So what was missing this year that we hope to see in either one of those two conferences? What's the big takeaways that you think need to be worked on between, in the next year?
Well, those are two separate questions. What was
missing? That's fair.
Big takeaways. What was missing was the voice. At least, again, I have to caveat my answer with, I did not visit enough booths. I did not go to enough sessions. But what was missing for me was enough about the voice part of voice and AI.
There were elements there. There were certainly some sessions on it. I feel like, though, that in 3 years, in 2019, when or even last year when this was talked about, the focus on voice was very much, what are we getting these smart speakers to do?
Right.
And there was no talk of smart speakers.
No, none.
None.
And so what to the second part of your question is for next year, I would hope that the market influences the types of topics that I want to hear, which is more audio synthesis, so text to voice, voice to text, voice to video, like whatever
the other modalities.
That Google Assistant, which you and I both, maybe you more than me, developed for, is not really the talk of the town. The language models behind it are not transformer based. They seem, in contrast to what we see today with Palm 2, very antiquated. If I ask it anything, it gives me a wall of blue links, that kind of stuff. I want to sort of see that evolve next year to more, if transformer based architectures are still the thing, I want to see what that means for these ambient devices that, not ambient, but these devices that are
I think of them as ambient ubiquitous devices. No, definitely. So that's an excellent point. I think the next couple of months we're going to see what the stage is set for that. Both Google and Amazon have hardware events coming up, and both have rumors that LLMs are going to be attached to their assistants. So we'll see what they actually, and those would be prime times for them to announce something. So we'll see.
Can I add one more that I just thought of? That I'd like to see next year? Google, if anyone from Google watches this, I want to see something about Dialogflow and where that's going.
Well, that's interesting. We've got other shows planned on some Dialogflow stuff.
I'll be tuning in.
So I think that was something that was lacking a lot at this show, was Google, and I say this as a GDE.
Right.
Google had almost no presence here, which in some ways made sense. They had just come off a big conference where they had released a whole bunch of new stuff. So everyone who had just released all of that took a vacation. But there was a lot of stuff announced, both aimed at developers and at consumer enterprise levels. So, we talk about retrieval augmented generation. There were at least 2 products, if not more, announced at Next that solve that basically make retrieval augmented generation a turnkey operation.
Yep.
You dump files in, you ask questions.
Yep.
It's that, almost no tuning on your part.
Right.
With an API though, so you can. So we do need to, you're right, we do need to hear more about that. But that's also traditional Google marketing in play. I think next year, and I think I said this, from a developer perspective, we're going, this year, the developer perspective was all about how do you build retrieval augmented generation? How do you build stuff that uses prompts? Next year, you're still going to see some of that. But next year, it's going to be, how do we test this?
Evaluate it.
How do we, there's more, now that we're building it, how do we make it repeatable? How do we know that we're making it repeatable? How do we add reliability? How do we add all of the other stuff that we're used to when developing these things? How do we design them? That we're going to start seeing those answers next year. That's I think my big prediction for what we see next year. And I hope that we see Google making more of a name for themselves next year.
All right, Google, if you're listening or watching.
Any final thoughts that you have about the conference?
I think it was well run. Kudos to Jamie and Pete and all the volunteers, everyone who put together a yeoman's effort for the attendees and of course the speakers. I have not been to a MoDev event in maybe 6 or 7 years, and I was reminded why. MoDev's still around, and I hope that with this new focus on a new sort of injection of enthusiasm about all things machine learning or AI, that next year will be even bigger and better. And you just broke some news. I had no idea there was going to be a developer conference, and so now I'm going to start lobbying to be part of that as well.
Yeah, no, Pete mentioned it in his opening keynote, and a couple of us cornered him later to try to get more information, and expect to see more details on that coming very soon, because I really hope I get to be part of that as well. So thanks again for joining me, Noble, and thanks again for being part of the Two Voice Devs Live and in person event. That was great. As always, if folks have comments, you can find us on Twitter, LinkedIn. Comments below. We love to hear what you're thinking and you're saying. It was great to see so many of you at the conference itself. One of the things that was great was I was visiting one of the booths at one point, and somebody said, "There's half of the Two Voice Devs," and I'm like, "Have we met before?" And no, we hadn't. But this was a regular listener. So shout out to you. Thank you, everyone who does listen and who gives us the feedback. We really appreciate it, and we're glad you like the show. So we hope to see you. We hope you enjoy this and every episode of Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs.
Take care, Noble. Have a great week.
Thank you. And you too.